Where all the people that own Stephen A? She not gonna do that. Let her cook. I want to know what y'all saying.
Following the news that Caitlin Clark would be traveling to Europe, ESPN is having its own meltdown, and it appears that they are beginning to regret how they treat ESPN's Clark all season was the place to witness Caitlin Clark be devalued and underappreciated. They never respected her and now believe they have the power to decide whether or not she travels to Europe.
We just have to have people because of marketing and their attention, and they're not as talented. We're not putting the best team out there.
Molly Karam, an ESPN analyst, essentially refused to give Caitlin credit for the whole year, claiming that she was making fun of the sport. How could she say that without laughing? Caitlin Clark transformed the sport and got people talking.
Versus Caitlin Clark, and that is just absolutely false. It is unfair to the women that have been there building this league to this moment so that Caitlin Clark's popularity could take it to the next level.
Another analyst denied that Caitlin Clark was being targeted by players. She was the most fouled player of the season, and at one point she even had a black eye. Hopefully, Caitlin can utilize her time off to look into opportunities in Europe that will synchronize ESPN and the WNBA, leaving them with nothing to discuss.
We're making a basketball argument. We're not saying we were making a basketball argument.
No, Andrea, I'm not going to let you do that.
Go ahead,
Andrea, I'm not going to let you make it seem like Caitlin Clark was averaging 5 points a game. At the time, she was still averaging 16 points a game, which was more than a lot of other guards that made the team. So don't do that. Don't make it seem like she was averaging 5 points and this was like a handout.
It appears that ESPN and its analysts are unable to handle the heat that Caitlin brings, particularly now that there are rumors that she may move to Europe rather than pursue her career in the WNBA. ESPN has spent the entire season disparaging and undermining Caitlin, frequently downplaying her accomplishments while favoring others. Now that they are facing the very real possibility that the player they have consistently disrespected may leave the spotlight in America and take her talents overseas, they are panicking because they know full well that losing Caitlin would be a huge blow to their viewership and content.
Her value is felt every place she goes, every arena she goes. TV, ratings, value.
ESPN has been minimizing for months. From the beginning of the season, ESPN promoted the narrative that Caitlin Clark, despite her undeniable star power, was somehow falling short of the enormous expectations placed on her following her record-breaking college career at Iowa, while Angel Reese, another rising star in women's basketball, was having a better season due to Caitlin's talents. With ESPN pundits like Molly Karam and Monica McNutt stoking the debate, the comparison appeared to go on forever. Caitlin's ranking among the league's best players and the idea that the women's game was being ridiculed by her manner of play.
The response of folks that don't think she is praised enough and she is above reproach in terms of criticism, or that praising another player is an affront to her, is like, whoa, bro. Also, you're in my mentions talking about women's basketball. I've never ever seen you before in my life.
The harsh criticism felt intentional, almost as if ESPN had made it their mission to undermine Caitlin's success by continuously placing her in the shadow of her peers rather than acknowledging her contributions to the game. However, this is where the karma comes in. ESPN is now terrified that if Caitlin Clark moves to Europe, they won't be able to talk about her anymore. That's right. The same player they criticized all season long for not being a true star might pack up her enormous fan base with her. Caitlin's influence could end up costing them dearly for months. ESPN framed Caitlin as only valuable because of her ability to draw viewers, claiming that she wasn't really a star on the court, but rather a product of media hype. Now that her departure is a real possibility, they're rushing to change that narrative.
You guys were right. That's what we're saying. You
no,
were right.
Molly, you did not say that, Molly. No,
That is what you said.
That's not what you said, Molly.
What are you guys
That is not what you.
They've come to understand that Caitlin is much more than just a player. They've created whole narratives and conversations around her presence. Losing her to Europe would not only affect ESPN's programming, but it might also send shockwaves through the WNBA, both of which greatly depended on her appeal to boost viewership and engagement. Take a look at how their perspectives have shifted.
We would love for the WNBA to make voting not anonymous. Because if you were the person that had that one vote, you should just be able to stand on it, and we should know who you are. In the NBA, voting is not anonymous. Yeah. So I would love for the WNBA to make the voting so we see who put the votes where. That's That's all I'm saying.
It was no easy task for Caitlin to lead the Indiana Fever, a team that had spent years around the bottom of the WNBA, to their first playoff position in what seemed like forever. Not only did Clark survive her rookie season, but she flourished by putting on performances that silenced even her harshest critics every single week. Despite the intense pressure to perform, her poise and brilliance on the court were nothing short of extraordinary. She elevated a team that many had written off by showcasing her leadership and unparalleled talent.
The Indiana Fever have 2 All-Stars in their starting lineup. They also have the reigning Rookie of the Year. Chicago has none of that. So the lift for Angel Reese has been much greater.
However, despite these achievements, ESPN was unable to change their narrative until the end of the season, when Caitlin's dominance could no longer be disregarded. At that point, they started to recognize Caitlin's brilliance, almost as if they had been supporting her the entire time. It was almost comical how quickly ESPN changed course and praised Caitlin as the star they had spent the majority of the season disparaging.